Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Who's Views. Hope you are well. Welcome to the WHOTASTIC panel. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
And welcome to our special guest on this show, The Secret Diaries of a Who fan, to Neil Cole. How are you, Neil?
Hello, I'm here. I'm alive, breathing, and in the current time dimension with you lot.
Which is always a pleasure and also extremely lucky in this day and age, because you can end up anywhere at all, I think, these day and age. Yes, so yes, there's The Secret Diaries of a Who fan. This was Brendan's idea, this particular show. So, Brendan, what do you want from us on this show? Tell us all about it.
I want to know every dirty little... No, sorry, what I want...
We don't have that much time.
Sorry, wrong program. No, I always think you sometimes are in a Doctor Who convention, or you're talking amongst a few Doctor Who fans you've managed to find, or you're at school in that little kind of, part of the classroom where a few of you got the Doctor Who magazine out, and you're in discussion about Doctor Who. And you often find that people get quite snooty about certain things, get very critical about certain things. And you sometimes go, oh, it's a good job I didn't speak, because I actually like what you're slagging off, that we are criticizing, what you're ridiculing. And so the guilty pleasures is, you've kind of kept quiet, thinking most of fandom seems to really I'd be scathing about this, but I actually really like it. And I think this tonight is we can out our innermost kind of vexed moments and angst, and hopefully by the end of the night we feel a lot better and we can get on with our life.
So this could be Who therapy, everybody. This is what this is. This is Who therapy. Is that right? Wonderful, wonderful.
You're going to be our counsellor, aren't you, JT? You're going to counsel us.
I certainly am. Paul's back with us there. So, Neil, this is a great show for you to come on to, because you can get rid of all those secrets that you want to talk about here. So this is going to be great. If you've got any secrets, if you've got anything you want to get off your chest here as well, Who viewers, thanks for joining us this evening. Don't forget, get it in the comments. We'll bring them up and we'll have a good laugh, good chat about them as well. No judgments here on this channel. Brendan, we're going to start with you then. What's your first secret that you want to tell us all about?
Well, if we run out of time, most of mine are behind me, viewers, but I'll start with mess. I'm getting the money's worth. I'll start with Mestor.
You got mine. Go on, sorry.
Our great gastropod. I think this is so we can, our good old gastropod friend here. And of course, I don't know. Why is he always slagged off? I was impressed actually with the Twin Dilemma, I'll be honest with you. There's a few guilty pleasures going on here. And I liked it as a start for Colin Baker, but I liked the Mestor character. He didn't have to be mobile. He didn't have to be running around. I know he had slug trails and everything, but he seemed to have his little throne, and it was all about his mind and the power of his mind. And there was that great moment with Colin Baker's Doctor when he talked about, if you fought me, it'd be like a pebble in an ocean and all that type of stuff. They were battling each other. And I thought I mean, to be honest, if you're going to slag off, as some fans do, our poor Mestor, what about the O'Bankans and Fort of Doomsday? Because they're basically, he sat on his little throne all the time, just calling the shots. And actually, King Peladon, he sat on his backside in Curse of Peladon. He didn't do much.
He had a very nice backside, didn't he?
He said with kinky legs.
Well, and he had the boots on as well.
Well, what we'll have to say is,
for that.
you see, this is it. The guilty pleasures are all going off piste here. So,
look at that. We better mention that Neil is very busy holding up his laptop there, so we can see Mestor at Neil's museum down in Allendale.
I'll just show you. Here's a super guilty pleasure. Don't know if you can see it. Mestor's never seen on screen feet, which are really cute. There they are. Really cute little feet he's got, bless him. Look at that. Mestor's feet. Yeah.
Hence why he didn't move much. But it was a nice segue there, Neil, because obviously we came to your museum, and actually his face mask is actually a very nice, complex face mask, isn't it? It's very impressive.
Very, yeah.
Yep. That's the picture I've got up there is actually from Neil's museum. That's the one you've just seen there as well. I'm really pleased with that. I took that picture, everybody. I'm really pleased with myself.
I had to restore that mask. It was one of my big restorations because it was in the Longleat fire, and it was basically all the fine detail had gone, and it got smoke damage. So I had to resculpt it, and it's a really complex, beautiful bit of work. He's an alien monster.
And the actor who played him, I mean, we might as well help each other out here. I mean, why was Mestor so slagged off? I thought he was an impressive creature. He was powerful. Why do you think he's been slagged off by fans so much?
Well, I think, it's interesting because if you compare him the same year to the Tractators, I love the Tractators as well. Why do I think he's got slagged off? I think it's to do with how he was portrayed in the show, what they did with him, rather than if you imagine, say, Graham Harper directing The Twin Dilemma, and you imagine the same lighting he'd used on sort of Shara's Jack, and you had that smoke and that atmosphere. I just think you saw him. They literally pointed a camera at a wonderful costume. And I wish actually I've got a picture for tonight, which I might be able to find on my laptop. The guy who made the costumes called Barry Smith, and he got in touch with me. And he lives in the States now. And he's a drummer in the States now. Lovely chap. And he sent me the pictures of what Mestor should have looked like. He was making it in his room. And by always showing you that picture from the front, you miss the profile, which really, it's this beautiful costume that goes right out at the back. Yeah. It's like a proper slug train. I've got the picture of it somewhere. And the problem, like that shot there, right? By only showing him from the waist up, you don't see that there was this lovely sort of, trail cape that whole costume continued outwards. And I think it was just the way it was filmed. And I love the voice, actually. I think Edward Richfield did a great job. And I love him. He's one of my bloody guilty pleasures. Yeah. So, you swine. But at the end of the day, I think it was just the way he was filmed. I think he was filmed too literally. It's like the Wirren or another one. I mean, I love the Wirren.
Well, look at Neil. Look at this. I mean, Sutek hardly moved off his little throne, did he? And he even had a little hand tickle in his bum, so he can't get away with it either. I mean, honestly,
Sutek. I think Sutek. The lighting in the place, the green eyes, the whole thing. The fact with Sutek is because it didn't make him move, you didn't see how little he could move. So I think, again, he just sat impassively, and I think it worked because of that. And I think with Mestor, honestly, I just think lit properly, the right lighting, he was a crack. It's a great mask.
Are those of us who've still got a brain and a half left, are we allowed to come in on this, perhaps?
Absolutely, of course you can,
Come on, be ready.
Brendan, my dear, you know how I love to agree with you. There's nothing surer than whose views live stream. Right, I'm listening to the both of you, and it's very entertaining and very nice. And we're both lamenting the fact that Mestor wasn't filmed by Graham Harper. Here's a little secret for you might not know. The magma creature was, and it was so rubbish. Okay, so let's not talk about lighting. Let's not talk about direction. Let's not talk about what could have been. It may well to you have looked like a great costume and great on paper. But sitting there at the start of a doctor's area, what you've got is a big fluffy lump, okay, expected to be the greatest threat for this new doctor. And in that picture GT shows you, he's holding his hands up because he's been helping his mum do her wool before she starts her story knitting prior to that. So listen, can I send you both a couple of aspirin? Go for a lie down, and they can
this is the whole point. This is the whole point about the Twin Dilemma. It does have this effect on Doctor Who fans of a certain age. I don't know what the new ones make of it as well, but having come off the back of the Caves of Androzani as well, which is a classic to all of us. Everybody is always about that one. It got, I can watch the Twin Dilemma quite nicely as well. But I have to say, it was a thrill to see Mestor at Neil's Museum. It really was.
Very quickly, what I think about the Magma Monster is, it's rubbish, but I've seen it in the flesh a few times. It's quite an impressive costume. The mask is a bit wrong. All I can say is, can you imagine if Graham Harper hadn't filmed the Magma Beast, what the hell it would have looked like then? And I think actually, if you look at Mestor close up, it is a far better design. Actually, it's a bit silly in it. It's just immobile. It's just a bit daft,
He's up there. Look, you've got the green.
The green argument for Mestor is that the magma creature was bad, but it could have been worse. Or Mestor is bad, but it could have been worse. So that's the argument.
No, we've got a lovely gastropod slug. Good idea. We had the green death maggots. And
Where's me mitten?
Amazing.
Where's me mitten?
What did the maggots do for you? Honestly, this slug is better. He would trounce those blooming silly maggots.
That's a very personal question, Brendan.
Let's just say hello to everybody that's watching us in the chat. Thanks very much for joining us, everybody. Sam is here, and Sam has said, is this a particularly good time to admit that time flight is a guilty pleasure of mine. No,
Oh,
okay,
Yeah.
pretend I didn't say that. Oh yeah, okay then, John. So come on, what? Give us one of yours then, John. Seeing as Brendan's and Neil's Mestor and time flight appreciation has not hit home with you, give us one of yours.
I will. I thought I'd been storm out of the room. One of mine. Okay, we've done a creature, so let's now go and talk about music. Now, we've spoken in various reviews and we've spoken in various Sunday breakfasts about how much we, as classic Who fans and you Who fans, love the work of Dudley Simpson. We love the work of the Radiophonic Workshop, particularly Paddy Kingsland for me. And when he's on cue, Murray Gold can be just excellent. But when you sit amongst friends and you're talking about the Doctor Who music, I've had to keep quiet a secret for quite some years that Kerry Blyton does it for me, particularly in Death to the Daleks, because I think Death to the Daleks is without doubt one of the best scores on a Doctor Who series, classic or new Who. Why? Because it's different. And we've talked before about certain tracks to Doctor Who being the tracks of our years. You know, we've been conjured at a certain time and all that. I just have to picture a Dalek now. And while I love the choir of New Who, and I love the strident themes of radiophonic Who, when I look at a Dalek, I hear the lovely lilting tones of Kerry Blyton and his little quartet. And I imagine them atop a little stage somewhere in some black and white Ealing comedy, playing away with this stuff. But you know what? As much as I love Dudley, there's many, many times you could listen to a piece of Dudley music and think, I'm not sure where that came from, what particular story. With this, within a few beats, if I was ever on Name That Tune Doctor Who style, within a few beats, I would know exactly which programme this came from. And you know what? One particular scene I will mean, and I'll let the maddening hordes of it go at me. But one particular scene I want to mention is, think about the scene where Elizabeth Sladen approaches that polystyrene city. It's very obviously a polystyrene city. It's very obviously a model. But together with some pretty funky lighting, the magnificent acting of Elizabeth Sladen, who puts on her best awe-inspired look, and on top of that, Kerry Blyton's music, perfection. It sells that city even to the most cynical of us. What's not to like?
Well, thank God for music then, because Mestor didn't need fancy music and play with glockenspiels and all that.
I'll give Mestor some music now.
Well, I have to.
Go on, sorry, Paul.
I was going to say, I have to back up. This is not on my list. If I put everything on my list, we'd be here for about 5 days.
Yes, we would.
Yes. I agree with John. I love Death of the Daleks. That's one of my favourite Pertwee Dalek stories. I love the music. It's very kind of. I know you're a Lon Hardy fan, John, and I think that Kerry Blyton's music for the Daleks is like Stan and Ollie in Doctor Who, but they're Daleks. You know, it's a bit like that. So I love Kerry Blyton's music, particularly in Silurians. But Death of the Daleks is a favourite of mine, and I could watch it every other day. Love Death of the Daleks. Absolutely love it.
Don't you find it very distracting that you had that scraping sound and then you had this strange kind of sound when the Exelons run at you? And yes, you're looking at a polystyrene model melt away and you're saying the music's a good distraction. It didn't blend. I mean, away, man. You sell this music to us, John.
I just have. You're not listening. Listen, you just
try another one. Try another example.
Don't turn the sound down and then watch the destruction of that city. Or for that matter, Elizabeth Sladen's discovery of it. I'll give you another example as well. And this has nothing to do with my own particular way I was brought up and religion I was brought up in. But the scenes where the Exelons are underground and having their service of sacrifice and that fantastic rhythmic chanting, almost monastic chanting that Kerry's managed to get behind them, gives that a surreal, almost spooky existence. And for all I hate to say this again, for all I love Dudley, I'm sure Dudley would have had a few whoops and bums and strings in there as well, and that would have suited. But this just makes that whole scene so memorable. And that's the thing. I challenge anybody here not to think about that scene and not to also think at the same time about that music. And that doesn't happen often in a lot of dramas. It's happened there with Death of the Daleks. And for that reason, Kerry did his job.
I wanted to know where all those skinny skeletal excellence found all that fleshy voice from. You know, I mean, it sounded like some Catholic benediction.
They were in training for Excel on Eurovision. You know, I mean,
yeah, they were off to Alpha Centauri. I mean, the soundtrack is memorable for whatever reason. The fact that you've got the London Saxophone Quartet in that as well. I think that must be the first credit for some, an external source on this sort of. It happens a wee bit in the modern series now, but this must have been the first one. But when I certainly remember, John, when Death of the Daleks came out on VHS, I'd never heard anything like that score, and that's why it's still in there to this day. I don't know what you think about this, Neil.
Oh, well, I was a musician for a while.
Yes,
it's interesting. I don't dislike it. I love the story. It's one of my favorite stories. I think I think it works absolutely brilliantly at times. The bits you've said about the city when Sarah finds it and the cave scenes are excellent. I just don't. If I think of Genesis the Daleks Dudley bit where the Daleks come around the corner, or the jazz band feel, I just think that's where it falls apart for me. It's just, a personal thing. It's just a bit too jazzy. It's a bit like, the movie Daleks. You just feel like there's a jazz quartet just, being carted around on a trailer behind the Daleks. So for me, like Dudley's Genesis the Dalek little sting works better for that. But I think the cave scene and the city bit is wonderful. He's a mixed bag for me, Kerry, because I like experimental music. So I just don't know for the actual Daleks themselves. It's I can hear it in my head.
I can hear it.
I was expecting Brian Canton Play Away to start,
Oh, Tony Arthur, I remember that. Death of the Daleks is done by no. Kerry Blyton, as we can see there's a picture of him. We don't see enough pictures of Kerry Blyton, so there's a picture of him. And just to let you know, Silver Screen are going to be releasing very shortly, actually, next month, the 24th of November, they're going to be releasing the full soundtrack for the first time of Revenge of the Cybermen, which he also did. If you want more information about that, go and look at the Merchandise Paradise that we dropped yesterday. It's all in there for you, so that's great. Have a look at that one. Right, we're going to come now. Thank you for that one, John. That was really cool. Let us know what you think of John's admission there, his guilty pleasure there. He likes the score to Death to the Daleks. We're going to come on to Neil. We're going to come to Neil now, our very special guest this evening. Neil, talking from the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi down in Allendale, and he's going to tell us right now of one of his secrets.
Well, first of all, just very quickly, I'm just going to say all of these things that people don't like, like Kerry Blyton, for example. I like everything in old, particularly old here. I like pretty much, I can find something to like in virtually everything. Do you know what I mean? I find it hard to dislike. But for me, I think my big thing is, I've ended up, not deliberately, but I've always loved, I grew up Friday nights. I used to go to middle school. My dad would go to the club and come back. And after the snooker on a Friday night, there was The Outer Limits was on about 1 o'clock on BBC Two in the morning. And then Saturday tea time was Doctor Who. And it was the monsters for me. And I never got into Doctor Who for an interest in the Doctor particularly. I accepted that there was a chap there doing the role, and as long as he was good, I just accepted all that. I was in for the monsters.
I like that,
and that's why I love The Outer Limits. The Outer Limits was compared to Star Trek. Why I don't like classic, but I do like classic Star Trek. But why I didn't love classic Trek was that a pasty Klingon's just not that exciting. Apart from the Gorn, it's pretty difficult to find any decent monsters in Star Trek. So for me, the monsters were a thing. So in terms of guilty pleasures in Doctor Who, I've ended up patching up some of the real sort of monsters that people really have a downer on. So I think my first sort of guilty pleasure of the evening is those monsters. I'm fed up. Here's a terrible thing to say. I am actually fed up with Daleks a bit now. I've got one at my door. I've got one here, and I love them. Don't get me wrong, I do love them. But I used to absolutely adore them. Where I've seen them now to the point where I love the one-off monsters, and often the ones that are really naff. So I was going to say Mestor, the Plasmatons. Honestly, I remember when I watched the Plasmatons first time, it was just great. There's some monsters, and I remember thinking they were quite good. I'm not going to defend the Plasmatons massively here because it's just like having stones thrown at you. But I've also got things like the Garm. The Garm, I adore the Garm, and I fixed him and repaired him, and I've got things like Plasmaton, and the other one I've sort of fixed up was the Shimmering Soldier from Delta. And it's just these monsters. There's just Doctor Who is really special because it's kind of it's just got this range of creatures that I don't think any, certainly in the 70s, no other show could hold a torch to them. And I think things like the Wirren, people take the mick out of the Wirren. And I just love the Wirren. I still do. They're great. You know, yes, they've got limitations, but it's a bit like Mestor. You know, they were trying to do something quite hard. I mean, you know, even on a Star, you know, you need a Star Wars budget to really do a slug like that in a way. But you've got some monsters and things like the Naimon. I love the Naimon. Mandrels. Give me a Mandrel.
Neil, if you went for, say, the Garm that has had you know, a checkered history with amongst fandom.
There he is.
I've seen him in your museum, and he is an impressive. He's an impressive exhibit. And actually, I think I wrote to you last year saying I think it was my favourite one when I went last year. But in relation to the story, he had a funny role. Plus, the way he spoke from his mouth killed it, didn't it? I mean, he was like some. Yeah,
I think you've got it. I think the thing with all these monsters is what's weird about being a sort of real Doctor Who fan is, if I can say it, all of these monsters are a bit crap. But yet, despite that, there's just something endearing about the Mandrels, for example, who are really not very good. And yet I adore them, absolutely adore them. And I spend most of my waking hours repairing them, you know, and when you see what they're made of as well, you know, but there's just something. I mean, the Plasmaton is a mail sack, right? And a pair of boiler suit bottoms covered in poly-expanding foam. That was my first monster I got. I was so desperate to wear a Doctor Who monster. That was one of my bucket list things. I put this on in my kitchen at the time. I put the trousers on. They've got big fried egg feet, right? They're really big feet, these boys have got, right? And then I put the top on. I didn't realize I had a tiny, tiny kitchen then. I moved forward and I fell over like that. And I jammed my head, the head of the Plas, and my feet against each end of the kitchen. And I lay there for 3 hours till my wife came in, and I thought I was going to die in the Plasmaton suit. They are absolutely kind of rubbish, but kind of wonderful. And I think for me, the guilty pleasure is you stick a Mandrel on in a silly, you know, even the silliest story. A monster will light my day. Any day.
Absolutely. Well, the Garm was one of Neil's secrets, one of the things he wanted to talk about. And that picture here, there he is. This is actually, he now resides at Neil's museum, which you can see on the scroll below, museumofclassicsci-fi.com. And you can also see Brendan and myself visited Neil just a few weeks ago. You can see our visit in the visitation playlist. Have a look at that. Please have a like of it as well and share. But the Garm there, and he's a big boy. He really is. He's a very big lad. And it was wonderful again to see him.
Yeah, I think the main problem with the Garm, and you know me, I'm a dog lover. I think the problem with the Garm is he's pretty garmless looking.
Do you know what, viewers? I was going to put that on the scroll, and I thought it's too obvious. No, don't do that.
You might do it anyway for you. So that was it. He's pretty garmless, you know.
He really is garmless. Let's have a look and see what people are saying into the chat. Timescales wants to know, Neil, are you on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now?
Apparently I am, so my wife tells me. Basically, I'm a bit dinosaur-like at the minute. I will trying to go into Twitter. I think I do have an account there. I'm mostly on Instagram, mainly Facebook, which is Neil Cole's Adventures in Sci-Fi Museum. That is like a daily blog of the museum, and all sorts goes on there, and also on Instagram. And I try to just waste it. The whole point of the museum is sharing this stuff and letting people come and see it. So I try, if people can't get, I'm aware people who are abroad can't see it, so I'll do making of videos when I'm taking props to bits. Look, this is what it was like inside, that sort of thing. So really Facebook and Instagram, but I'm going to try and get on Twitter
as well. Jamie's here saying, hang on a minute, where is it there? There we go. I bet it's creeping your museum at night. Well, you can see it because it's getting there now, isn't it?
I be here, Jamie, and I tell you what, it gives you the goosebumps. No, it's actually I'm so used to it. I'll be here after this show. I'm going to be fixing a Morlock from the Time Machine, and it's weird. I'm just used to it. It's the least spooky place to me there is. We've had several televised ghost hunts actually here. And people think, I'll do a ghost hunt in the museum. And I'm just thinking, let yourself away, mate. I mean, honestly, it's, you know what? Things like Mestor and the Garm and all these creatures, they're like friends. I can't, do you know, really?
You wouldn't want them waking up in the middle of the night, though. I can tell you I haven't seen them. David Forrest has shared with us his guilty pleasure here, and he's recently watched Warriors of the Deep. The Merker is a guilty pleasure.
Guilty secret for me. I know
Yeah.
David, and I know that he's probably watched Warriors of the Deep probably once a night for every night for the last 17 years because he never gets
Good man.
It's a
Good
shame.
man. Buy him a pint for that.
Absolutely, a few pints for that. Actually, see,
Yes.
your secret is now out. Thanks to John there, David. But welcome to Who's Views. I hope you've liked. I hope you've subscribed. Welcome. Time Lord 2023. Actually, I would like character options. A Merca action figure to go with my Silurians. There's a guilty secret of mine.
Weathering the pit as well.
Yes, exactly. Time Lord 2023. Good to see you. Daleks have appeared in more episodes than any other Doctor Who monster, and they have become somewhat predictable. Their iconic design and catchphrases made them instantly recognizable. And that's great to hear from a new generation coming through. Thank you very much for your comment there. TARDIS Spider joining us all the way over from the US of A. One of the many joining us from the US of A here. So good morning, good afternoon to you lot. Currently watching The Invasion, such a great story, yet minimal SFX. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm just writing I'm actually involved in writing a Doctor Who book at the minute, which I can't tell you about. But what I can tell you about is I've found one of my people who supports the museum has the last surviving pair of Morley motorcycle gloves, which were the Cybermen gloves. And he's got a pair of Invasion Cybermen gloves. And, you know, it's those little bits of things like that, which are just wonderful. And it's just a pair of spray, you know, and things like that are magic, just magic. So, sorry, I couldn't help but say that.
No, it's great that. I'd like, I'm coming back. Michelle's here. Hi, Michelle. She's saying you just want to rub the Garm's ears and tell him he's a good boy. Michelle, keep your private life private. We don't want too much information, kids.
That's what I mean. He was very biddable, wasn't he? He just went walkies, didn't he? Coming backwards and forwards.
He's great at the end, though. You know, with the big lever at the end, he bless him. He saves the entire cosmos.
He nearly broke a nail as well.
I wouldn't like to have to pick up his.
No.
But that was the Garm, and you can see the Garm, as we said, at Neil's museum. We'll be mentioning that a couple more times, obviously throughout tonight's show as well. And you can see, for those of you who can't get over here yet, you can see all the details on our visitations playlist where we went to see Neil as well. So that brings us on to Paul. Which one are you going to start with, my friend?
Well, before I mention my ones, let's just quickly go back to the Garm very, very quickly. In Neil's museum, it looks beautifully lit. And what we're talking about before, about various monsters or directors, it makes a difference how things are lit, how they're presented, whether or not you see a hand or a claw or a back of the head, like the Famazi, whatever. It's that kind of thing. You need to have a good director to direct your monsters, I think. Yeah. Okay. So my first one, and I have to do this in order because I'm very OCD. My first one is, everyone moans about this, Unearthly Child. Everyone loves the first episode, right? But everyone moans about the other three. I'm not going to call it Tribe of Gum or 100,000 BCs, Unearthly Child for 4 episodes, but the cavemen in the remaining 3 episodes, Captain Caveman, yes, are the actors who play the cavemen really do a fantastic job, because it's such a thankless task for an actor to play a caveman, you know. So you've got, on the left, you've got Howard Lang. I think he's Horg. He should have been called him because his daughter's called her. I don't understand why that gag wasn't put in. But
no, you tracked it. You know why?
Jeremy Young in the middle there playing Carl, and then Derek Newitt playing Za, and you can see that his girlfriend or wife is her, Aletha Charlton. They all play it beautifully.
We are.
And the cavemen are so violent, so aggressive, and I think, if you can suspend disbelief that they're speaking in English with English words, but it's the only way to communicate the story, I think it works really, really well. And the actors give it full commitment. And that's why I think for me it works. It's a great 4-part story, and it really puts the actors, the characters, in real peril. And I think it's probably the first and only time you see that all the characters get dirty, get messed up. Every other episode.
Can I just say one thing about what I like about what I think the Stone Age stuff does so well is if you watch the Unearthly Child through that, and at times I do find it a little bit hard going at times, but I think like the Cave of Skulls is really nice, a nice idea. But I think it sets up the arrival on Skaro so well, because you leave that plane and then they're in that petrified jungle, and that is. For me, one of the great moments of Doctor Who is when they've escaped with the spears and you've had that, then this is you're on a totally alien planet, and we know we're going to find the Daleks. And I just think I love that. I think without that, I think if we'd gone straight to Skaro, it would have missed out.
It's interesting, Neil, isn't it? Because when you look at it, 1963, British television in its primitive state, let's face it, but let's look at Doctor Who, those first few episodes. It starts in the present day, then it goes back to the past, and then it goes to the future. That pattern was repeated in the 2005 series when you think about it.
Yeah, but we can't let Paul off here. We're diluting it because Paul's getting away with this guilty pleasure. I've got to come back on him for 3 episodes.
Come ahead.
Yeah, five Faces of Doctor Who was the first time I came across An Earthly Child, and I taped it on audio. And for 3 episodes, I just heard all this. I want fire. I want a bit of fire.
Well, it was lucky they were talking at all. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, honestly,
have you seen 65 million BC with Raquel Welch? Have you?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
I know. Are you going to buy the? Are you going to buy the radio soundtrack to this? The ugh, and I want fire. I mean, they weren't violent at all. It was William Hartnell who was going to knock one of their blooming skulls in.
Well, look at the end scene, the bit where I think Zah puts a boulder over Carl's head. That's
a good scene.
That's a really good scene. Yeah.
And the bit where Carl breaks the guard's neck. That's horrible. It's
I'm going to admit here that I've always agreed that those 3 episodes are underrated, but because Paul's put them forward now, I'm going to deny all that. And
you can't agree. That's it.
And just be awkward. Despite the fact that 100,000 years BC, before Jesus trod the earth, that man was trying, and woman, him and her, were trying to discover fire. But what was really good? That they had a radar that they could all go to and learn how to speak and talk properly to help them ask the visiting aliens how they make them fire too. It's all a bit too. You mentioned Raquel Welch, and she battled, as we know, the well-known booby doos in that particular adventure.
That's one of my guilty pleasures.
It's all about Raquel Welch, and all a bit BBC English for my liking. So roll on The Dead Planet.
I like it. I really do think that what I love about that story is the caveman bit is the resolution of putting the fire in the skull, and I think that's the sort of thing that New Who struggles time and again, is to find what the Doctor used to do was think on his wits. He wasn't some magic, immortal, all-powerful. No, he had to literally scrap. Now he probably just point his sonic screwdriver and go, and everyone would faint or die or whatever. That was just, he had to actually, they were stuck in a cave, and I think that's a very satisfying resolution to that. And then that would run like hell. It wasn't it.
When you're saying, Neil, about the chase back to the TARDIS as well, when they rush back and they fire they're chucking spears at them and everything, it's great.
Well, yeah,
because the story, it's fantastic.
Because they were sick of the script. They were dying to get back in that blooming time. You're swapping those 3 episodes with those cavemen yabbering away about fire, and with Eileen Way, swap Eileen Way for Raquel Welch. How are Paul? You've got this confused.
Do you know what, though?
To be fair, Raquel Welch is more attractive than Eileen Way. I'm sure she's very pretty.
How dare you?
But I think that she's still. I think she's a better actor than Raquel Welch. I'll give you that. But,
well, yeah. I have to say, guys, when that was repeated in '81, of course, we all saw it for the first time at the 5 Faces of Doctor Who. A certain generation of us. I was entranced. There was something about that story that got me. Yes, I did lull. I just thought, oh gosh, but because it was actually so textured when you think about it. And all I kept thinking was, of the kids that had come before me seeing this for the first time and seeing a different sort of Doctor, and yet this was the first Doctor in his first big event. I was just, and stay tuned to us actually, Who viewers, like this and subscribe and ring that bell, because we're going to be looking at An Unearthly Child in Who's Views Reviews next month as part of our 60th anniversary Diamond celebrations. So come back and see that, because we're going to talk more about that.
The gloves are off for that one then, guys, okay?
Yep, absolutely. It means we're going to have to watch it again, and we're going to have to review it properly. Absolutely.
The gloves will be off, but the furs will be on.
Yeah, and the fleas as well, probably,
that's why I should be cancelled. Feel further.
Yeah. Right. So that brings us down to that's the end of round 1 of all those confessions. Let us know what you think. Let's just have a look in the. Let's have a look in the chat to see if anybody's got anything for us here. Oh, Time Lord 2023 is saying her favorite is City of Death and the Scaroth. Really creepy. Yeah, I'm glad you've discovered that one as well. Actually, that's brilliant. And David here is saying Sarah Jane and the Time Warrior is good, and her disbelief that she's in the Middle Ages.
Great story.
Yeah,
one of my favorite stories. Just a lovely story.
Yeah, it's a great story, that one. We'll have to review that at some point.
JT, we want people to up the game for round 2 because there's a lot of people praising bits of Doctor Who, and what we're supposed to be really doing.
I'm really sorry. I know I should be being really nasty. I'm sorry.
No, I don't think we should be being really nasty of it, but I think we should be basically, you confess your bit and then we'll agree with you or not agree with you.
What can I say something? What's interesting, though, I think it's interesting that I know JT's refereeing, but he's not saying anything about his favourites, is he? No.
I'm chipping in, but no, it's this one. No. Okay, Brendan, if you want to bring up number 2.
Right, number 2.
Bring up, we mean it.
I've got it, as in the number. The number 2.
Bring up your second guilty secret pleasure one that you want to talk about,
which was Creature from the Pit, wasn't it?
That I love it. What do you want?
The Tythonian ambassador, who obviously came from the planet Chloris, and I think he's had a bad time anyway, so I really don't think we should be messing with this poor lad. He'd been left in the pit for years, and Erato was a hell of a beast. He filled a whole cave, remember? He was classic Doctor Who green.
Green, yeah.
We had the same green, and actually it was the same kind of green effect as the ruined larvae. So it had everything going for it. And the only thing that's undersold our poor Tythonian Erato is a lot the adults in the room, the actors, taking the mick out of, how do you make a cavernous green blob that was being imprisoned for years into a communication tool? And of course, they had some proboscis out there, simple proboscis. And I know John's going to quickly jump in and say, this is all part of my sexual awakening or something when I was a teenager. But no, I thought it made a lot of sense to me that he reached out and, Tom Baker, why he blew into it, I don't know. But basically, I found Erato was endearing. I loved Erato. He was growly. He was massive. He squashed people accidentally. Lady Adrasta had been nasty to him.
It happens every day.
Yeah.
All the motive was there. Everything made sense. I loved that kind of Doctor Who green. And what everybody slags him off over is some proboscis that the adults have slagged off. But as a kid, I loved it. And it made all sense to me. No problem.
I was going to say, I actually like the story and the way it's set. The jungle living's great in it. And the model work of Erato works really well, but I'm sorry, the meteorological balloon doesn't really cut it, does it?
Oh, do you think? Oh, bless.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at that then. So we've got the creature that Brendan is talking about here. Now, this was infamous, of course, for those of you who don't know, in this particular season, which. Well, yeah. So we've got this particular season. They've got this big creature, which Neil does not have in his Museum of Science Fiction Classic Museum because somebody pulled the plug out of it, and it disappeared very, very quickly. So let's have a look at some of the other features about this story here. We've got Tom and Lala here. We've got an interesting guest cast. I mean, they're all going for it on here. Come on, we can't lie about this, guys, can we?
Maya Francis is superb in this.
Yeah, okay. We could talk about the fantastic guest cast, and they are fantastic, but we can't escape the Tythonian ambassador in the room. We just can't. Brendan may well want to talk. We will want to preempt what I'm going to see here about talking about sexual awakenings being spoiled. Absolutely nothing to do with that at all. What it did, though, was created me a sense of expectation, which would never be able to be lived up to when as my burgeoning sexuality dawned on me at that point, never be able to be lived up to. And it was, to be serious, for a second, it just added to that sense of Doctor Who at the time of, let's have a laugh at this. Let's not take it seriously. It doesn't matter. It's just for the kids. And you said the post says the meteorological balloon couldn't cut it. And they couldn't cut the meteorological balloon properly because it just looked like what it was, a huge big lump of bleh landing on top of anybody who happened to come across it.
you two are in denial. Right, Irato, I'm going
I'm in
to
Glasgow. I'll be in
Yeah,
decline.
I'm just going to say you would hate Irato, but I bet you both say you love the crinoid. There you go. The crinoid,
Oh,
Irato.
you can't. No, I'm going to make that. I mean, you cannot compare that to a crinoid. You cannot compare that to the crinoids. The crinoids were actually manufactured properly. This one was blown up. This is just a massive big sheet when you look at it. I mean, it was obvious that in this season they did run out of money. I mean, there's a lot of reuse of sets here. There's a lot of reuse in this season. It is the panto season of Doctor Who. They're all having a jolly good time. But no, you can't compare that.
They may have run out of money, but this was the first story filmed for that season, so they have no excuses, no budgetary reasons for excusing to put the big blob.
No, but he's a big blob because he's been eating lots of fibre. It's full of methane. It's an enormous
No.
And that's a good thing.
Right, so listen, viewers, let us know what you think.
Global wind, he should have been pricked.
Let us know what you think, who viewers, of Irato and the creature from the pit. That is one of Brendan's, well, one of the things he should never have revealed, really. I mean, that's going to be one of the things that Doctor Who fans are over. We've lost Neil at the moment. Hopefully he'll be able to come back to us. So we're going to move on to John.
So flabbergasted by saying about the criminal.
He was gassed by your flabber. Yeah, John, we'll move on to your second one. What's your second one?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, it's about time we started talking about Doctor Who being ahead of the curve again and introducing strong female characters. And unfortunately, in a bid, an early 80s bid to do this, when Doctor Who cast a fantastic BAFTA award-winning actress, Beryl Reid, into the cast of the freighter commander Briggs, we never did get to find her Christian name, but I'm sure I've always called her Babs. It was Babs Briggs, the freighter commander, and the BAFTA award-winning actress that was Beryl Reid powers it up. She's wearing big hair. She's wearing a leather jacket with a strap around it. She proves how tough she is by never taking her gloves off and filling in the duty log with gloves. How tough is that? But here is an absolutely barnstorming performance by someone you wouldn't expect to see in that role. And to be serious for a second, what John Nathan Turner was very good at doing was thinking outside, and they didn't use this phrase at the time, thinking outside the box, the blue box in this particular instance, and casting someone you might not think of. It's all too easy to think of particular actresses you might have put in that part, and the character would have been long forgotten. But no, he cast Beryl Riggs as Babs Briggs, and therefore she brings a whole new slant to it. I don't care what people say that she didn't know that saying we've gone into warp drive was a bit like turning into Acacia Avenue. I don't care that that's what she thought. The fact is, she gives a whole different slant on that. And let's never, ever lose sight of the fact that this was a BAFTA award-winning actress who was appearing at that time in the John le Carré adaptations for which she won those awards. That's and giving the best of British performances. So Doctor Who fans, you can be very short-sighted and very blinkered. You can look at something, oh no, they condemned her before she even appeared. Once she appeared, as far as I was concerned, she was consigned to Doctor Who history, and now she's in Doctor Who heaven.
That happened an awful lot, though, and it still happens this very day, though, of course, as we know. But the brilliant thing here is, of course, that none of us knew back then, including the people that were making the show, none of us could really see how big this show was going to get abroad. And as TARDIS Spider says, and he said this to us a lot on the show as well, that a lot of our actors who we take for granted, like Beryl Reid, who is a British legend and a huge talent of her time, he only knows from Doctor Who. So if there's any way that our fans, our friends abroad can go and check out their work, then you must do. John's also quoting here, this I've just thought of a particularly nasty epitaph for him, which is another one of her classic lines. And then Gary's coming in saying Mary Morrison Kinder was strong too that season. Absolutely. And this is what gets me about all of this. Here's Beryl Reid, there's Mary Morris, there's a couple of others. Yeah. And we're being told in this day and age there were never any real strong role models.
Do you want a bit of gossip from the past?
What?
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
The first Doctor Who confession, the only Doctor Who confession up to that point for many years I attended, was Panopticon in 1982, which was shortly after the broadcast of Earthshock. And I had the pleasure of spending some time in the bar with John Nathan Turner having a chat. And I got to hear about who he envisaged earlier in the part of Babs Briggs, and that was the wonderful Pat Phoenix. And if you look at Briggs's hairdo, you can just see that the makeup designer, she's got an Elsie Tanner on her head then, and you can just see Pat Phoenix doing as good a role as that as Beryl Reid does.
She would have vamped it up, wouldn't she?
Absolutely, absolutely, she would. Now, latterly, he also considered her for the part that Rack in Enlightenment as well, another strong female part as well. But nonetheless, that was the gossip at the time. But you can see what he was after in terms of a very strong female British actress writing that part out of the norm, if you like, you know, not going for the typical Sigourney Weaver type approach that the movies might go for. We're going for a good actress, somebody who looks as though they've been around the block a few times, and she sells it so well.
Well, she certainly had been around the block. Yeah. Just like, you know, because Neil has just rejoined us in the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi. One of John's guilty pleasures here is his absolute delight that Beryl Reid was in Earthshock, cast, of course, by John Nathan Turner. And we were just explaining to our friends from abroad that Beryl Reid was another one of these British legends that starred in Doctor Who, because, of course, they don't know who these people are. They were all in-house, if you will like. And it's a shame. Go look at their work.
Yeah. If you want to find something out to compare her work to it, and Beryl Reid, I think, superb in Earthshock. So sadly, I can't disagree with John on this one, which is really annoying. So I really like this character. She's brilliant in it. But The Killing of Sister George, the movie, get that if you want to see some excellent work from Beryl Reid. She's superb in that. Absolutely superb.
I thought she was very good with Terry Wogan on Blankety Blank.
That was hilarious. Hilarious. But the famous stories about Beryl Reid there usually come from Peter Davison, don't they? And over the many years, we've been very lucky that he's obviously told us this story a lot. That poor old Beryl there came into Doctor Who and had no clue at all what was going on. Just very, very typical of anybody that was coming into Doctor Who. Didn't understand the story, didn't understand the lines. The warp drive one is very famous. Peter always enjoyed telling that one as well. She thought she was walking into a street or something like that. It's brilliant. But there she is. We've got her in Doctor Who in those 4 episodes from 1982 forever. She's there.
It's funny that Brendan, because he would mentions Blankety Blank, because that, unfortunately, in the latter part of Beryl's career, she became known for light comedy and appearing in panel game shows and things like that. There's a body of work there about that she did. So I dare say the fans of Doctor Who, especially people of my age at the time, looking at Blankety Blank and thinking, oh, why is she on this? Without looking back at her past record. And I don't mind the fact that she didn't know what was going on and didn't buy the scenes.
It's charming.
I think that adds to its charm. The fact that she's sitting there. There's a wonderful line that I still quote now. She gets the line wrong and they just go with it. Peter Grimway did that often. And she's talking, the line is, what's the delay? Where's Ringway? And she just quite obviously says, what's the day? Where's Ringway? In my head to this day. She was brilliant.
She brings a bit of, she brings into space a bit of provincial accent. It's a bit like the Crotons with a Brummie accent. You know, you need that in Doctor Who.
She went to RADA as well, though.
Well, we had Irish Cybermen, don't forget. Back in Michelle's saying to us here, I love this from Michelle. Those who say there are no strong female characters in Classic Who do not know what they are talking about. Here, you are absolutely right, Michelle. And TARDIS Spider over in America is also saying, lucky for me, all that classic BBC that still exists is waiting for me. And when you find it, make the most of it, because you're not getting any from the 21st century. I can assure you. Right, so that was great there. Ooh, editorial comment. John, thank you very much for that one. Let's go over now to Neil for another one. What other secret have you got, Neil, that you want to share with us?
Can you just see my list that you've got there? I've got a few things spinning around my brain. What was the other things on my list?
Do you want me to choose one for you, my friend?
Yeah, just choose one.
Okay, I'm going to choose for you then. I'm going to do this for you because I'm feeling particularly wicked. Let me just see if we can bring this one up for you. I want you to tell me about your appreciation of this.
Oh!
Go on then, before we cast you into it, tell us everything.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? It's a lovely show.
Is it?
It's just fab. Time Lash. I love Time Lash. And I think you probably gathered, or you might have seen, if you followed my Facebook page, you'll see that Glenn McCoy has become a big supporter of the museum, and he's just donated his hand-typed script to the museum. And
Wonderful.
I had a great pleasure. Just last Saturday, we sat and had 2 hours chat in the local coffee shop over cakes, and he pops up now. And it was really interesting talking to him, because obviously I get the chance to just sort of say, just how it turned out, and just all this, from what he wrote and everything else, and just is quite fascinating because he was a paramedic. He was one of the very first ever trained paramedics, and I had no idea until I was watching Life on Mars again recently what the state of paramedics was in the early 70s. And that was basically, or the 70s, but that was, you could be dying, but look, shove them in the van. I can't go out. We need to get to the hospital fast. And that was the state it was. And Glenn was one of the first people to actually be a trained paramedic. So when somebody was...
Really?
Yeah. And he's actually in the process of writing a drama about the very first paramedics, because there was there's a scene in Life on Mars where a guy gets shot, and you've probably all seen Life on Mars, I'd imagine. And basically, there's just this guy's dying, and he says the guy from the future says, do something, and he says, I don't know, mate, I'm just a van driver, I'm just getting to the hospital. And I thought, wow,
yes,
we take it for granted that people who drive those ambulances can actually help. And Glenn was one of the very first people to do that, and it's quite interesting. Anyway, but actually, I've always liked Time Lash, and I just think it gets really, really bashed. And I think there are other stories. Obviously, it's the budget shortfall of the season. Absolutely, there's no doubt about that. The music.
What makes you say that, Neil?
Oh, come on.
It's Christmas, everybody.
I love it. That's the best use of tinsel you've ever seen, isn't it?
Well, sure, because this came after Christmas, didn't it? Obviously, back in '85. Do you remember? And I just remember looking at this, thinking, "You are kidding me! That's left over from the annual BBC Christmas party, isn't it? It was nicked and it was stuck on a piece of wall."
I think, in terms of Doctor Who stories, right, it's kind of in the sort of same zone as like the Space Museum and all these sort of real low, they're all low budgeters. But I think, right, looking at it, it's a good premise overall. I'm not saying it's, the greatest. I mean, I'm a hard science fiction guy. I read sci-fi as well. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is, shaking the foundations of science fiction. But it's Chris Mobile Porters, basically. Well, the worst, certainly. Apparently, but basically, you can't hate Paul Darrow either. No,
bless him.
Paul Darrow's costume is in the museum here, and I think his performance. I'll be honest, I've never really understood. There's things, right? I'm not saying it's a brilliantly produced show, but I don't get the hate for it, because I think it's. I'm not going to say it's one of the greats of Doctor Who, but it's just not. It's not an awful Doctor Who. Yeah,
Neil,
yes.
I'll ask you this one then, because I'm playing devil's advocate on this.
Go for it.
When we watched the Unquiet Dead, there was a brilliant writing of Charles Dickens's character. In this, I'm an English teacher. H.G. Wells, do me a favour.
What didn't you like about it then? What explain, Brendan, what you're not quite happy with H.G. Wells' inclusion here?
Well, where do you start? I mean, in what shape or form are we giving any credit to H.G. Wells as a great sci-fi writer in the way he is given? I mean, the dialogue is inane, and the acting is even worse. I mean, the H.G. Wells. If you compared Simon Callow's Dickens to that character as H.G. Wells, you're underselling H.G. Wells so badly.
I'm not going to argue with that on the H.G. Wells. Particularly, I think that was largely personally, I would say it was a bit of a miscast on the H.G. Wells. I would agree, but it's a bit like Mark of the Rani the same year. If you live up in the northeast, it's got the most hilarious local miners who have no idea of a Geordie accent, and it's absolutely
what it's like, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there was some. At the time, the casting was, and so I think its strengths overweigh it. I think it's consistent, and I think the villain is really good. It's a really good central villain, and I just don't hate it. And I think, especially if you watch one of the new effects on the Blu-ray, which I just watched very recently, it just takes the rough edges off, a bit like Revenge of the Cybermen. I love Revenge of the Cybermen, but the Blu-ray, because I've had a Doctor Who club at school, I had it for 20 years, and when I got the kids loved Revenge of the Cybermen, but you put that on with those little rough edges knocked off, and it's a cracking little story. I'm not, again, these are not rewriting science fiction legends or anything. Yeah.
Neil, what about the attempted impregnation of Perry?
Well, let try and keep it clean. Try and keep it clean. Okay, because I want to get to the plot. Well,
I'm only mentioning the plot. That there is.
I know, but I've got to be careful because what I want to talk about with that is I actually mentioned this when we were in Blackpool at the beginning of the year for Invasion Blackpool. I mentioned this to Nicola on stage, saying, wasn't Time Lash a waste of your time turning up? And she was so charming and so polite about it. And we had to remind Colin that all that happened for Nicola as Perry was that she was chained to a blooming pole for most of the episode. And by that, I don't mean somebody from Poland. I mean an actual wooden pole. That's a gag I made, which Colin appreciated at the convention. I mean that was just something that was done. It was such a bad story, wasn't it? Companion.
Fundamentally, Time Lash has got a nice villain. It's a standard studio runaround Doctor Who. It's no better, no worse, I don't think, than anything like, your Nightmare on Edens or your Space Museums and all these. It's a standard Doctor Who show. It kind of feels. I mean, that's a brilliant villain. I mean,
the makeup's superb.
It just feels like a standard Doctor Who show. In some ways, it feels more like Doctor Who than some of the other stories around it, if you know what I mean, or not. It's just, I just don't mind it. I'm not saying it's the greatest story ever. I just don't get the hate on it. And I always enjoy it when I watch it. Simple as that. And I think Paul Darrow's performance, I know it's arch and all this, I just don't get that. I just don't get the hate that performance gets. I mean,
well, didn't John always say that he was? John Nick Turner said that he'd spoken to Paul about it, and Paul was and then upped it, and then really went for it.
He's a villain. He's a snarky villain.
My only comment really to make about Time Lash is that I attended my second Doctor Who convention 40 years later. I liked the first one so much I went. This is the next one, and it was at the DWAS convention last April, and the chap who played the android in Time Lash, an actor called Dean Hollingsworth, he also played the conductor in The Great Show in the Galaxy, was one of the guests at that convention. I'm a very nice fella. However, my tale is that I met his wife at the bar. Oh boy, she was great fun, and she and I had a good few drinks together and a few really laughs. Wonderful fun she was. She's Eastern European and she's great fun. And she was so impressed that her husband was deemed to be have so many fans at the convention that it was so touching and lovely. And she was great fun.
I think I said to I can't remember what I said to, but it was just that I'd rather sit down and watch Time Lash at times than some other Doctor Who stories that are sort of right. Here's it. I'm going to be really. Here you go. Because I mean, my back's against the wall with Time Lash. I can feel it. I can feel the pressure coming on me here. But I've just watched all the Derek Sherman stories. Right now, the Invasion is generally held up as like this paragon of things. I'll be blunt, right? I mean, it's okay when we finally get some Cybermen, although they disappear for an entire episode, having just appeared. But the early episodes, they're okay.
Yeah, the build-up. Yeah.
I have to disagree with you, Neil.
Yeah, no, I realise
Tobias Vaughan and Kevin.
Yeah, I'd rather watch at times. It's just there's certain stories that are held up as amazing, and then there's ones. Honestly, Time Lash is just, to me, it's a standard Doctor Who story, middle season Doctor Who story. I just don't get the hate. I just don't get the hate for it. I just think it's fine. I get the shoddy effects. But now with the Blu-ray, you don't have to put up with it. They're great. They're nice. And their little tinkly tinsels, it really adds. It's nice. It's sort of.
Well, I haven't seen them yet, so I'm looking forward to when it eventually comes out on standard Blu-ray, and then I can get it. Gary's reminding us all here of Underworld, which is another one, really. So this is. I mean, Gary, is this one of your guilty pleasures? Do you love this? I mean, again, it's a cracking story, just let down by the fact that they use CSO all the way through it.
Knickers to Underworld.
Well, that was Mike Baldwin's place, wasn't it?
Yes.
Right, so we're going to move on now. Paul, Coronation Street, for those of you who don't know.
I think I lost that round, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah, I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think Time Lash is ever going to really move from that one. I think its reputation is intact. Okay, Paul, what's the next one, please?
Right, okay, well, I want to get to do two because like Neil, I kind of want to try and choose which is my worst or best, depending on your point of view. So, and I would do it in order of broadcast picks, but I'll pick some more random. So one that's actually mentioned in the title card for tonight is the giant rat from Towns of Wen Chiang. Now, it's very cute in that picture there on the left. Now, so that's my argument shot to bits now. But the thing is, when I saw this originally, I was scared of this rat. It terrified me as a kid. right? And I don't know if you've probably all seen the Blu-ray box set of season 8 with Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss talking about Doctor Who, and they talk about the giant rat. And I was never self-aware as a kid. And they say on Monday morning you went to school and all the kids in the playground were embarrassed by Ratgate on Monday morning. And that's nonsense.
Rubbish.
I never was that self-aware as a kid, and I was terrified of the rat.
Yeah.
And when I saw it a few months later in the Who's Doctor Who documentary, when they showed behind the scenes, that made me even more scared, because the bit where it's brightly lit and it runs up the tunnel, it's really scary.
And
that rat scared the hell out of me.
Cool, yeah, I agree.
And I think it's really, again, when it's shot properly by David Maloney, it's brilliant, and it scared me as a kid. And I've still got great memories of being scared as that kid, and that's why I love
that's
the
cool.
giant rat. Yeah, so,
I think it always looks like a prop from Just on Frontier, and you should play your Joker on it. It looked like one of those giant animals that some
it looks a bit like it should be. It should be in A Wind in the Willows or something. But I love it.
You can't praise Mestor and then down the road.
That's an excellent point, Neil. That is an excellent
Of course you can. But,
Neil, I'm playing my Joker on the giant rat, because I think
I can quite legitimately, because I didn't praise Mester, I can quite legitimately come in and just remember the fact that I am sure that the rat in Talons of Weng Chiang wasn't actually in the water, it was actually on a conveyor belt, because when it finished on Doctor Who, it went straight to the Generation game as the cuddly toy. And that's exactly where it belonged, because it took, fortunately, the Blu-ray to give us what it should have looked like. And
the Blu-ray effects aren't any better.
At the time, what it needed was dirtying up, because it just looked like a big...
I agree.
They didn't have the time, did they? Apparently, they didn't have the time to do that. They looked at. I think that was one of the things I remember hearing, that they just didn't have the time. The thing turned up and they had to shoot it. I mean, the rat, though, I have to put into place that the rat is, of course, incredibly important for television in Britain as it is, because you may not be aware of this, but of course, this rat, this was the first appearance ever of the legend himself, Roland. Who's a television legend. So Roland Rat made his debut in Doctor Who, everybody. You can see him there. Look, there he is. After that, he worked for years and years and years, saved the television station. You can see that was his. I mean, look at that. What a star. What a star, everybody.
He's lost a lot of weight since Talons of Weng Chiang, hasn't he?
Well, he had to, because he wasn't working, you see. Let's have a look, see what they're saying in the chat. Hang on a minute. Sudoku 24, hello to you, was saying the rat never bothered him. And then he went on to say that David Maloney was one of the great directors. Absolutely. And he must have been absolutely thrilled when he saw what they'd given him for a rat. Tardy Spider, he wants to know who Roland Rat is. Google him. And good luck. You'll have a thrill as well. And the giant rat, Gary is telling us and reminding us, in the new Avengers Nose episode was done better. I don't remember that.
They just used a rat in a model set, and that was it.
It's a rat in a small model.
Close up. Yeah.
What made the giant rat in the end was Louise Jameson's scream. It was the good actor.
Yeah. Leela screaming is what scared me as a little boy, because I was 7, and at that point, you knew Leela was all right. You didn't have to worry too much about Leela like you did with Sarah. But to hear her scream, that's what got me. Or the thing's eating her. Do something. Horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Sorry, I've just had a random thought because I've got ADHD. Do you know what? I'd far rather take the Garm and Mestor over that wretched, silly-looking Rutan any day. Even though Horror of Fang Rock's brill, the Rutan's a right old letdown. Sorry, you can go back to the conversation now. Sorry, that
well, it is really, isn't it?
Sorry?
He's related to Arato. They've got the same green fluorescent thing.
Green. It's like Terence Dix used to say.
I mean, it's a great story. I love it, and I watch it a lot. But it's just a blob on the stair. You know, give me the slug. Mestor coming up the stairs, flopping up with his slippers on. You know, sorry.
I've never imagined those feet, though.
I've gone on for tangent. Sorry, JT. I'll stop.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I was going to agree with you, because it always seemed a bit odd that these mighty warriors in the Sontarans, all they had to do with this blob was stand on them, surely. I really don't understand.
Remember, they are shapeshifters. So we very soon, rather than the bogey of Fang Rock, which is what we got initially.
John on the chat there. Honestly, I don't hate the Rutan. I don't think I hate it. I just wanted more from the Rutan. I wanted it to be really scary.
Well, maybe nowadays, with all the effects they've got, they could bring it back and make some facilities of the shape-shifting process and have it in a humanoid form or whatever. I don't know. We've got that there.
It's really creepy when it does the lighthouse keeper, and he's Ruben's done. That's really...
That's great, that. Yeah, that's really quite scary. That's quite scary. So if any of you lot like those and that's your guilty pleasure, do let us know on this show here. Great. We're going... how you finding it, who viewers? Are you enjoying yourself?
Can I make one last point? We can
You certainly can. Go ahead.
We talked about DVD replacement effects, and kind of Neil and I can agreed on this. I don't think the replacement effects of the rat on the season 14 box set make them any better. I don't think they do.
I am with
some
you.
Some of them do. Yeah.
I agree. I think because I've shown these to kids. As a teacher, I'd have children who've never seen. Certainly, initially, before the new show, I had children who'd never seen Doctor Who. So Friday lunchtime, we'd watch half an hour's Doctor Who, just for a nice thing to do, on a Friday. And it generally be kids, a bit quieter. It's lovely. And then the new series came on. So then you were fighting against, these bigger budgets and everything else. And yet the kids would still love the old show, they would. But the one or two programs that the first one that I got and showed them the new version and it went down a storm was Day of the Daleks Special Edition, which I just think really, really just lifted it all a lot. And the kids, the fighting, the laser blast and everything, just adds that. You can watch it without if you don't want to. But for a new audience used to that speed of direction and everything else, it just gave it a kick, which certainly went down well. And suddenly they were like, oh, the third Doctor's great and everything. And it was just, it was, but I can obviously, I'll watch the original effect as much as happily. But I agree. I think the Talons is the least exciting DVD upgrade. But absolutely. I don't think it needed it. I think the eye effect, not better than the original. I think the original glowing eyes of Light and Jack are actually possibly better.
This is the fact of these DVD collections when they upgrade the CGI. They're covering our guilty secrets. Look, I was gonna mention the dinosaurs in the last Jim Pertwee season. I mean, if they upgrade that, we're missing the Chewits monster. We're missing those lovely dioramas. I mean, I love that pterodactyl in the garage. I don't care.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, now you mentioned it, let's come on to this because you did want to talk, Brendan, about the dinosaur invasion. So carry on. Let's talk about this one and let us know, who viewers, what you think of the dinosaur invasion here.
Well, put it this way, you got your money's worth. I mean, I think I was 5. You got the T-Rex. I think the T-Rex is the Chewits monster one. He's better when he's lying down in a Hannah and Sarah Jane's trying to take photographs of him and his eye opens and shuts and that's quite tense. And then his tail whacks the glass open and smashes it. The pterodactyl flying at the the Brontosaurus, the Stegosaurus, they're all fine because they were quite still with a fantastic diorama chewing a tree and all the rest of it. And if anybody wants to slag off Invasion of the Dinosaurs effects, which seems to be fandom's default, again, it's adults talking and forgetting they were kids. Even as a kid, you couldn't see through that.
I couldn't.
Well, I was a kid. Number one, as a every 5-year-old is into dinosaurs. So
look at this one. Let me show you this one. Look at this.
That's
now
brilliant.
Look at the right-hand corner.
You can see the person's hand.
It's sooty.
Yeah. I mean, what we're forgetting is you saw a dinosaur, you were fixated. They had some good moments when they had them in the dark. So like the pterodactyl in the garage, the T-Rex in the Hannah really works. The Brontosaurus in the background, fine. The Stegosaurus in the background, fine. And the dioramas were really good, I have to say. And the interaction with the CSO was no big issue. Because I was going to raise you, all those people who think, oh yeah, I'm going to just lay into the dinosaur invasion of Earth because it's easy to do. And let's hope for a CGI upgrade. Right, Terror of the Zygons. You tell me about the Loch Ness Monster down the River Thames, and you tell me, how much better is that? Not.
Well, we better put this into clarity here, because if you don't know, as many of us will do as Doctor Who fans, that these models were not actually done in-house at the BBC, and to his dying day, Barry Letts regretted that move. They thought they were actually investing in an independent company who promised them the world and then delivered what we got, including that. So I mean, I can understand. I remember being at a convention once when Barry Letts, I felt for the guy. He had Terence to his right, and he was there, and Terence was just like this. You could see Terence sinking down in utter embarrassment, because the story is sound. It's a cracking story, just let down by these dinosaurs. They really, really are. And Barry was so apologetic. We were really robbed, and I got it. I felt for him.
But this is what I think. I think this is what feeds into fandom a little bit. The errato thing is Tom Baker joking about this giant phallus he had to blow into. And in this one, Barry Letts has opened the doors, because he's always acknowledged that he sequence, because the Drashigs were so successful. And that's what he was expecting. And that's what he was kind of promised. And Barry Letts, been a wonderful, wonderful producer and a very honest bloke, fed that to the fans. And unfortunately, the fans have run with it. When actually, if you look at a lot of the effects in the early 70s, Doctor Who, if you look at some of those old movies, if you look at Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, if you look at all of those, there's nothing wrong with these dinosaurs.
Now you've mentioned that, Jack Thursby, I would take it. Let's bring him into this, because he's proving that actually there were better things around on similar budgets. I always thought that the dinosaurs would have looked great in Harryhausen-esque stop motion. If they update the effects, that's what they should do. It would fit perfectly. John is saying that if it is one that would be high on the list for a CGI upgrade on the box set. Actually, it isn't, because they're saying they're quoting costs. Gary is saying to us here, Invasion of the Dinosaurs is in my top 5 Pertwees. It is a sound story. Jamie is also saying he used to love the Chewits adverts with the plasticine dinosaur. I have to tell you, Jamie, when I was a kid and I saw the Chewits adverts, I always thought it was Doctor Who. Simply because of my memory of Invasion of the Dinosaurs. And what have we got here as well? We've also got, put this up. TARDIS Spider, did the dinosaurs let the story down, or just fail to lift it to higher heights? It's certainly infamous because of those effects. It really, really is. What are you going to say, Paul?
I was going to say, the stop motion Ray Harryhausen effects are fantastic. If you go back as far as the original King Kong, which was 1930 or thereabouts, I think the effects in that are amazing for the time. Obviously, you can't compare movie budgets to TV budgets, even though it's a very old movie. If they had done stop motion, it'd have been great. Or did the Drashigs it was a slower filming model technique, so it was much better filmed. But I agree with what Brendan said. The pterodactyl works really well for me, and there are certain shots with the T-Rex that works. The bits where I think Yates fires the Doctor's gun at the T-Rex, and there's a real close-up of its head. And that's a really good model shot. It's just the body is the Chewits monster all over, isn't it?
Yeah. It really, really is.
Can I butt in for a little second here? I think that this is a story. This is of ambition. It's hugely ambitious. And Doctor Who, and while I agree that Barry Letts was let down, by this point, he was 4 years into the role. He should have realised what can be achieved on a Doctor Who budget, no matter what some department or company tries to do. He should have been aware of that. But nonetheless, it's because it's such a good story and so well directed by Paddy Russell, and John and Liz are in top form in it as well. It's because of the quality of the story that I'm prepared to overlook the naffness of the dinosaurs, because you get swept along by it. And it's in that instance you go, fair enough. Where Doctor Who, if you like, Time Lash and others like it, might have a naff effect or a naff set or whatever it is, you can be less forgiving because the story's not compensating for that. You can see they're trying very hard here to entertain us, so I'll ignore that effect. The only problem, however, with the Invasion of the Dinosaurs is they are so integral to the whole story that, unfortunately, you can't wince and then miss it. They keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Yeah. And every time you do that, when you watch it with people who aren't as blessed as we are to understand the wonder of Doctor Who, it does become rather wince-inducing. And I'm sad to hear that the upgrade might not be able to happen, Paul, because that would have been a must for me, just to see how it complements the story and perhaps says
You never know. You never know. I mean, the costs might come down. They come down all the time, don't they? But the last time I certainly queried it was definitely before COVID, and they said no, it's not going to happen right now.
Yeah.
I want to move on as well, because actually tying in beautifully what you've just said there, John, is one of your choices again, and it's this lot.
Hey.
Right. So tell me about what you've just said there. How does it fit in with the horns of Naimon?
Yeah, because this is where the opposite is true, where a good costume transcends a pretty naff story. Horns of Nine was a bit of a runaround. It's towards the end of the season. They've saved the money for Shada, the story that ultimately doesn't happen.
That's such a shame.
Yeah, indeed. But you know what they have? Do you know what working for them? June Hudson, the wonderful June Hudson. And although she's given threepence halfpenny, she produces, I think, a really good costume.
Yeah,
and because the director, Kenny McBain, knows his stuff, he knows to shoot from beneath, he knows to bring the lights down, and he knows also to give these things the most fantastic electronic voices. So again, on their own, pretty naff. But together with a good costume designer, great director, great lighting, and a fantastic voice, they go to make these a fantastic creature.
I adore them. When the
Naimon emerges for the first instance, and then two further Naimon come behind them, and Saudi sees them. It's a wonderful scene. I know Graham Crowden is always slagged off for not taking it seriously. I love Graham Crowden, by the by. But during that particular scene, the sheer look of terror and horror on his face sells the moment, sells the creature, sells the costume. So, listen, I'm on Team Naimon.
I'm just going to say quickly, I'm not trying to sort of wheel it back in here, but you cannot say that Paul Darrow's time-lapse performance is worse than Crowther in that. I mean, I love Horns of Naimon, just to be clear. I think the Naimons are bloody great. I love them. But honestly, in terms of silly performances, I would say Crowther's is more daft.
No, but to be frank, Neil, I didn't make a comment about Paul Darrow's performance.
You didn't actually. That is absolutely fair. But I'm just
trying to bring the slag off. Yeah, well, I'm going to say that Crowden's performance is of note of being OTT. But the particular scene I'm talking about is how he sells this idea. That
I agree. I agree. It's a good bit.
He sells the costume, and he even sells the deficiencies.
I love that story. I think it's a great.
There's nothing to do with Jude Hudson's design. It's all to do with the lack of money. But I still think that they add things together to create a wonderful effect. So, Team Naimon.
We are getting actually a bit of love here from a couple of the Who viewers here. Sudoku24 is loving the Horns of Naimon and is mentioning the warbling voice. I always like that. Was one of the novel things about the character. It was adding something else to the characters of the Naimon, wasn't it? We've got to remember as well that the Naimon also came back in a new sort of form as a cousin, didn't it, in the Matt Smith period as well. So they've still got that legacy. They've still got that effect here. Gary Bryan's also saying how many... Sorry, so go ahead, Neil.
Sorry, Joe. You know, the voice is quite interesting because you see, I think the voice is fantastic on the Naimon, as is the Earthshock Cyberman. And then it's quite interesting that, you look at, say, the new Cybermen that came back in Army of Ghosts and all that lot. I think it's such a weak voice compared to the Earthshock voice and the Horns of Naimon voice. And I remember thinking that Cyber voice in there was really weak compared to the Earthshock Cyberman. And the Naimon have got that. It's just that. The speaker really listen to them, and it's really impressive.
I totally agree with that. I mean, when you're looking at the Naimon, let's bring the picture back up here as well. When you're looking at the Naimon, bearing in mind where we are in Doctor Who's history, we're in the 70s. Now, look at the three of them on the left. When the lighting is right, imagine one of these things in Neil's museum. When the lighting is right, they are gorgeous. They look stunning. I remember seeing this in the Blackpool exhibition and scared the hell out of me, because again, like that shot there, I'm sure it was in red, or a burgundy or something like that. It was blood, and it was absolutely vile. I couldn't really look at the thing, even though on television I was a bit like, oh, hang on a minute, it's just a big bull. But that in a sense is right. But when you're talking to Sudoku24 about the voice element coming into it here, that's the imagination. That was the creativity. See, what else can we do to these creatures? They don't necessarily do that in television this day and age, in my personal opinion. I don't know, but that's what made the work. Jack is actually saying this. Us classic Who fans have great imaginations which make up for the shoddiest of effects and costume. And also, because we had good stories. We were engaged by stories. Go on, Paul.
was going to say, the era of Graham Williams, I really like. And going back to what Neil said about, I like Doctor Who for the monsters as well, and I'm a big fan of Outer Limits. I've got the DVDs behind me here. Must watch them again. They're fantastic. But Graham Williams, or certainly the latter part of Tom, was massively inventive. There wasn't many comebacks of old monsters. As much as I love the J&T period, we've got Cybermen, the Master, etc. I love all that, but I love the inventiveness of Williams, and sometimes. Obviously, the money didn't stretch to it like a Ratu or Kroll or something like that. But sometimes I think that there was so much variety in some of the ideas they came up with. They weren't always going to stick or hit. You know, they threw lots of things at the series. But there's some great monsters that appear that are quite original and unusual, which I like about that period of the show.
Well, let's talk. Let's go back further with your point there, Paul, for another one of your guilty pleasures, one of your secrets you want to tell us about. So tying in beautifully with what you've just said, here's one from the 60s that you love.
Oh, look at it. Gorgeous poetry.
That must have cost money.
It must have cost money, yes. I have to say...
Is he constipated?
Well, you've got to go, John. You've got to go. That's all I'm saying.
Go on then, Paul. Tell us all about this one.
Right. Well, the Zarbi and the Menoptera. The Web Planet, I had a conversation on the Messenger with John a few months ago about this, but this particular monster, the Zarbi and the Menoptera, in the story, there are no other human characters other than the Doctor and his crew. And I think, again, Doctor's imagination at this point, they'll try anything to try and make it unusual. They weren't sure what the series was going to be. You had comedy, hard sci-fi, you had historical stories, but this was really imaginative for me because you had the insects. Doctor Who does insects a lot. We've kind of touched on it already. But the Zarbi, this costume is amazing because effectively it's kind of a pantomime ant. But I think all the film sequences that they have in when they go to Ealing and they do flying sequences with the Menoptera and the bits where the crater of needles, it's fantastically shot, which is unusual because Richard Martin isn't a great director. A lovely man to see interviewed, but I'm not sure he can direct traffic particularly. But his shots at Ealing with the Zarbi capturing Barbara and some of the Menoptera and them flying in on the Kirby wires is great. And I love the fact that they have this imagination. There's no other human characters. I have to say though, I think the Optera aren't very good.
Oh, go on, explain more.
The Optera, the third characters, the Menoptera are great. The Zarbi are great, but the Venom Grubs are quite like as well. But the Optera, the ones with the Mexican accents, are a bit rough.
Wouldn't be allowed today.
They wouldn't be allowed, because you
The
have to be
Optera make Mestor. The Optera make Mestor look like the Mona Lisa. Let's face it.
That's
Neil, what's your opinion? I mean, you had a lovely reaction to this photograph there. So, what's your opinion as a monster builder and restorer of this? I mean, would you love one of those if you found it now?
I would do unspeakable acts for one of those. I think. I mean, in short, I
can just see in your kitchen, Neil. Try again.
Yeah, I just think I admire this show for its utter scope and ambition. Shot around the same time as the first season, I think, of Outer Limits. When you think of what the budget was and everything else, I mean, it's an insanely brave show. I can't pretend I find, whenever I watch Classic Who, basically another habit I've got into is with my daughter and I, we watch a half hour of Doctor Who every week, which is the Saturday morning before I open up the museum. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things that it's all of these shows, all classic Doctor Who. If you're watching this, youngsters, and you've never seen classic Doctor Who before, it's like Doctor Who Club. You watch it in half an hour chunks. You've got a handful of sets, maybe 3 or 4 sets, small cast, location footage if you're lucky, but it's the same sets and over an hour and a half or 2, whatever the full length. That is stretched thin if you watch it in one sitting. Watch it in half hours.
Like we used to do.
Yeah, you forget the fact you've forgotten what that set looked like. That set, so there's all that renewal of the whole thing. So it is absolutely the way to watch this. And if any story needs watching in half an hour chunks, in my humble opinion, it's this one. I find it.
I would. Unfortunately, I can't even take half an hour of this. It's a real. I used to watch this on my exercise bike. Thinking, well, there's more punishment watching this than there is punishing myself by pedaling The exercise bike.
It is.
Yeah.
I have to say, I can't being critical about
again. It's
Yeah.
like the dinosaurs being over ambitious. Bless it for trying. Good on them for trying. They're trying so many different things.
I honestly think if they cut it down,
you can only commend them for that. However, even watching an episode at a time can't do it. Paul, I think what you really need to do is a cold, wet towel to your forehead, have a little lie down. I'll post you a couple of gypsy creams and a People's Friend and magazine, and you'll be fine.
I think if you watch that at the time,
have every edition of People's Friends, John, with the gypsy creams I'll take you up on.
Go on, let Neil. What do you say, Neil? Go on ahead.
If you watch that in this, I've just been rewatching The Twilight Zone season 1, and then I still watch The Outer Limits because my son loves The Outer Limits. Now you imagine I think you watch your imagine watching that in the 60s, early 60s.
Yes.
Pre-new stuff. Actually, half an hour. It would have been quite a startling show. And even if you compare it to The Outer Limits monsters are excellent. They really are very good for aesthetics for the time. It really would have been quite an outstanding visual thing, but it's just, again, as a viewer, I am patient. I do struggle with this one.
I think they depicted Mestor more cleverly, keep him immobile, whereas with the Menoptera and with the Zabi, I mean, the Zabi broke the fourth wall and nearly took a cameraman.
Literally.
Yeah, but again, it's production techniques of the time, Brendan. I mean, it was television in its infancy.
The Menoptera were flying bumblebees, for God's sake. They were just these woolly little blooming things. You look as though they've been in the Arctic for the 10th Planet episode.
I think
Neil's right. This is the early days of a science fiction show with very limited money.
You think
very limited technology?
That would have been quite a show at the time.
Yeah, it would have been. The kids would have loved it.
Yeah. So Neil, our argument is this is the secret confessions of fans, because most fans slag off those creatures. That's what we say.
Yeah.
But
sometimes I think
everybody finds them an embarrassment.
No, I think I sometimes think because of that, it's very easy to look back at these things. But I'm a great believer in I love old British television, as you know, and I think that's very much of its day and of its time. And when you look at it of its time, I think that I'm with Neil. I think it looks very, very. I think it must have been great for the kids watching at 5:15 on a Saturday night back then when nothing else was doing anything. Neil, we're going to come to one of yours last night.
Can I just say one final thing, GT? It got 13.6 million viewers, apparently, the web planet.
I can believe it.
All just
I think it got a bit more than that, because obviously the effects of the stories that we were having, the Daleks and so forth, that was bringing people in. Neil, tell us all about your big confession on this one.
Right. I've just rewatched this. I was going to talk about Terminus, but you've pushed me. So
yes,
you swine. I had problems with this season because I was about 17 when it was on. I was playing in heavy rock bands and a Rush.
Oh yes.
And honestly, to be honest, by this point, this was just crackers. I mean, I just didn't get it. I watched it with my daughter and I. We watched it just this weekend. We finished episode 3 of it. I've got the baby and various other things in it. Now, I am not going to stand here. Wow. Thanks for this. I actually enjoyed it, and I was trying to work out why. And I said to my daughter and I were literally howling over our cereal just this weekend, because I said, "Oh, we're getting into the motorcycle chase." Basically, where the music goes absolutely crazy, and it's Bonnie opening a gate. And she's opening a gate, and it's like she's just opening it's like me taking the dog for a walk, except with and it's absolutely bonkers. And it's a mix.
Well, let's just explain. Sorry to interrupt. Let's just explain. In case you don't know, we are talking about Delta and the Bannerman. There you go, Neil. Carry on.
It's a story that I would have generally hated at one time. Really, but I can't pretend, because as I said, I like decent science fiction. I mean, my favorite sci-fi movie of all time, to be clear, is the original Alien. I think it's just a masterpiece. I like Arthur C. Clarke. I like hard sci-fi, of which this bloody well isn't. And
what makes you think that?
You see, that was interesting because my daughter didn't know Ken Dodd was. So to her,
you're kidding me. No, it started, everyone. It's starting. We're losing our legends.
Yeah, but she just thought he was great. She thought he was fine as what he was. He was the guy awarding a prize And you know, we know there's a big problem with baggage and characters. You know, I always say the reason the X-Files worked so well was because Duchovny and Anderson at the time were virtually unknown. So they were Mulder and Scully, totally, you know. But the problem with these characters for us is they come in, certainly for me in the 80s, was Ken Dodd came in, same with Bella Reed. They come in, there's just so much baggage. And I have the problem with that with Nardole, you know, in the new series. A little bit. Yeah. To be fair, I like him. I like the actor, and I find him very funny. But the bottom line is, it just every time I look at him, I just keep thinking, you know, Vic and Reed, you know, Vic and Bob, you know, and Peanuts, the song, and things like that. I struggle because it's just that baggage. But I'm trying to defend this. It's just balmy. It's it's a warm little show, and I thought it's unlike anything else, and it is absolutely nuts. But I've just watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Do you know, it's absolutely crackers in a sense, because I was like you back in 1987. I couldn't stand season 24.
I would have said it was the reason Doctor Who should be cancelled. Is that?
Yeah, I would have agreed. But time is a great healer, and you can start looking at. I've just watched recently Time in the Rani. I actually really enjoyed it, and certainly Delta is getting a lot of love in the chat. We've got Gary here saying that Delta is a cracker. I hope you mean the story, young man. We've got Sadoko 24 here. I don't think I'll ever like season 24. I was the same. Tardy Spider is saying Delta also. These are all great stories. Delta is the only story from season 24 I actually like, says Sam. The music choice, says John, on the bike is bad in my opinion, but the villain eating raw meat on the steps to a chalet is poor class. And then Jamie's saying here, Doddy was a legend. Again, if you're outside the UK and you don't know who Ken Dodd was and you haven't got to this episode yet in Doctor Who, you've got to look him up because he was one of our all-time great comics. We will never see his like again. He was so clever. Neil is showing us in the museum some of the exhibits he's got.
Yeah, I've got a small Donner and the Bannerman collection. I've got the adult and I've got the Rod puppet baby. That's the one that Delta holds and it Googles and everything. And then my daughter and I, we had this hilarious moment. I mean, honestly, no other Doctor Who gives you such value for money as this, because when in a cross shot, it's literally this amazing Stephen Mansfield puppet. And I know Stephen a little bit, and we talked about it, and he put his life and soul into that puppet, because there's two. There's one that comes out the egg, which was like a hand thing, which came out.
That's right.
This is the second one, and it's got a rod harness up its backside, basically. And it's got all the wires, and you can see the cables in this. And this is the one she cradles, and it's really bloody good. You know, it's a really beautiful thing, and it's on screen, not even a minute, and then it crossfades and it's a baby and a baby grow. And my daughter and I, we just cracked up. We've seen it before. And it's just the fact it goes to a green baby and a baby. And we're just like, yay. And it's like, this is stupid, but it just makes us laugh. And then we're on the motorcycle having excitement opening farm gates. It's just not where we live. It's like come on, let's open the gate. The cows, shut the gate. Cows are coming. You know, the excitement.
I have real trouble disagreeing with anything you've said, Neil, because I love Delta and the Bannerman. Even at the original broadcast, I've always loved this story. My favourite of season 24, and it just such a fun story. And I think Kef's music's brilliant in it. It just works so well.
The music's nuts.
I wish it was in it longer.
The music's absolutely nuts, and it takes you back to the remember the album that came out in the late 80s. Doctor Who the Music, was it? It wasn't the.
That's right. Yeah, the 25th anniversary album.
And I remember playing it on my record player and really enjoying it. And yet I was done a lot of music, and I could tell it was all samples off a keyboard. It's dated so horrifically, and it's patch number 62 on this, but yet it's sort of got a joie de vivre. It just battles along regardless, and then it's just mad. I can't say exactly why I love it. It just I enjoy it, and it put a smile on my face, and simple as that.
John, you love this story as well, don't you?
I love the whole of season 24.
Yeah,
loved that before, loved it at the time, still love it now. It was an experiment, and it had it gone on like that.
I like Bonnie Langford.
Oh, we all love Bonnie Langford.
Yeah. I think that she got a lot of hate. I mean, she's one of the nicest people I've met when I've actually met her. Yeah. And honestly, and Sylvester's lovely in this story as well. He's just really nice. You know,
if I was to give you a guilty secret here, then it would be the fact that it was John here on the WHOTASTIC panel that got me thinking I should really reevaluate season 24. Hence, I've started with Time in the Rani. So thank you for that one.
As in all things, I was right.
And you know what? My
Time in the Rani is great. Love it.
My daughter, who's 13, she first watched these. We watched them on DVD a couple of years ago, and one of her favourite Doctor Who's in her brain. You know, in all the modern Doctor Who. I mean, we love season 12. My favourite season 12, and I love season 18. But at the end of the day, she loves the Kangs. She always, whenever I put Paradise Towers on, she loves that business with the
Girl power.
I've always said, in fact, when we had the Sylvester McCoy tribute show for his 80th, I said at the time, Time in the Rani for me is a bit like Doctor Who would have been had it been produced by Aaron Spelling, because it's got big effects, big hair, big shoulder pads, and huge big performances. And you know, as a one-off, it's brilliant to see. Treasure it, folks. We shall never see its likes again.
No, you won't, because it is of its era so much more than virtually. And Delta the Bannermen, that music by Kev McCulloch, nobody I could ever see commissioning and allowing that music out, because it's, if you think about the music now, this the way it's done, it's a time capsule.
The Noise Abatement Society, we put a stop to it.
Yeah, if you got the music, it reminds me of when I was going in, trying to buy guitars when I was a teenager, and you go to a music shop and there'd be loads of people loads of young teenagers trying to show off their latest things. And I'd be like, hey, listen, patch number 21, and it was that. It takes you back. It's a time capsule of the technology of that time, audio and visually, and it's just
absolutely.
And the story is just crackers, isn't it?
It's absolutely crackers, and you wouldn't get anything like that today. But
No.
it is dated in that sense. But you take it, don't you? Sadeko24 wants to know: does your daughter like the blue Kangs or the red Kangs?
That's a good question. I'll go and ask her. Actually, she's not here to ask. She's upstairs. I don't know. That's a good question. I need to ask her. Yeah.
And Java Bean, Michael here, Halgo, good morning to you. He's just joined us. He's saying a morning all because he's in Australia. My guilty pleasure is Who's Views. Like, share, and subscribe. Well, that's and thank you for reminding me there, Java Bean. That's very good of you. Cannibals and caretakers. What's not to like, says Gary.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, indeed. Okay. Right. Listen, I want to talk about as well, Brendan. What you've got another one that's ticking along there. That's a character that is really, 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 really not liked.
Chameleon.
This one, yeah. Let's go on. Tell us about this one.
Well, again, I think we seem to be given a lot of free passes because of when they were made and all the rest of it. And so, if we're in the spirit of free passes, then Chameleon needs a free pass. I mean, if the Monoptera
needs a bus pass, what do you mean?
Well, the Monoptera and Zarbi are getting a free pass because it was black and white. The dinosaurs weren't given a free pass because you've decided to go down the kind of fandom majority road. Chameleon in the early 80s, it was meant as a replacement for K9, of course.
No, he wasn't. I'll just correct that right now. No, he wasn't. Not meant for a replacement for K9 at all.
I'm just quoting from the magazine, and
it's wrong. I can absolutely assure you, it was never a replacement for K9. What had happened is John had seen this thing. I'm in a shed or something like that at the workshop. It was at the workshop basically, and he went, "Ooh, let's put that into the show." You know what John was like? He thought, "I want to be on the top of everything." It was never meant to be a replacement for K9. You can never replace K9.
But K9 had limits, remember? I mean, they always had to delay where it was. Chameleon, as you know, could do more than we saw on the TV. It's a very sad story, isn't it? That the person who was responsible for it died in a tragic boat accident. And the instructions almost basically went with it. And so basically you were limited story-wise to a shape-shifting chameleon who could have done more. I thought aesthetically was very striking. And yes, again, you see, fandom gets easily fed stories. So if Barry Letts slags off the dinosaurs, that's what everybody does. If Tom Baker slags off Erato, that's what fandom does. Fandom follows a trend. And in this one, everybody goes on about Chameleon because Peter Davison slags it off and said he was really happy in Planet of Fire, and it was his best piece of acting was when it died, and he was pretending he was sad.
Well, they all slagged it off because they didn't like it. That's the thing. I mean, when you're working, I mean, let's remember, Chameleon was actually a robot. It was technologically slightly more advanced than what they should have put into the show. I'm going to name drop here because, as people will know, I knew John towards the end of his life, and for some reason this thing came up in conversation one day, and I'd said to him, "Well, why didn't you just have a different guest star name to play Chameleon in every story?"
Yeah.
And he went, and you could see that he was absolutely going,
"That's genius. I hadn't thought of that either."
Because he could have had a big name or affordable name and he hadn't
just
thought
keep
of
Gerald
it
Flood.
Do you know, I can't understand about Chameleon, because I don't mind Chameleon at all. Is I don't understand why, you know, the success of the C-3PO or the Maria costume from Metropolis, you could have easily had just a really good slim actor in a really good fiberglass cast suit. I just don't get why. I think, again, a bit like Delta and the Bannermen and the music, I think it was very much a time capsule. It was a highly advanced thing. It was because you could have just had a guy in, you know, you imagine how good C-3PO looks on screen. You could have easily, really, by that point, the BBC could have knocked that out. And I don't understand. I think it was just a bit like the music with Kepa Kulak's keyboard. It was just of the era, and it was the what's the word? It was a novelty, really, in a sense. But his first story, I remember, King's Demons, I loved it, and I thought, wow, that's a cool robot, you know. And I knew it was an actual robot. That was the difference, I think. We all knew, because it was, I don't know what the publicity was like, I remember at the time, but we knew that was actually a robot. And at that point in time, that was like, wowza, that robot can move its arms, its eyes. What can it do?
I'm trying to think if I saw it at Longleat. I'm trying to think.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, because it when you see it in the flesh, I don't know if you saw it at the exhibition. I don't know, because I don't recall.
No.
I remember seeing it at Longleat, but it was impressive, and it just seems a shame that actually it's criticised because it's immobility, but that's partly because, you know, its capability was never utilised really. And I agree with the idea, JT, that you could have used the shapeshifting to have a different guest star each time. Of course.
Yeah. That's the nub of it, Brendan. That I just assumed when Chameleon was introduced and was called Chameleon, that was going to be the purpose behind it. In fact, there was fan rumor at the time that because the Five Doctors was on the horizon, that Chameleon was going to fulfill some function to bring back some, you know, previous companions or whatever into the Five Doctors. So it was a no-brainer for me that Chameleon was given that title and that sort of modus operandi to enable it to change for every episode. So the actual, you know, contrivance itself wouldn't be necessary. So GT totally gobsmacked me.
He could have played Tom Baker in the Five Doctors.
So you think of that, it's so obvious.
He sort of fulfilled that role of the time. I don't know if you remember a series called Fantastic Voyage, which had a character called Varian in an American show. And you had things like The Man from Atlantis, and you had all these different shows, and like, you know, where you would have special powered good guy. And I just thought he filled that role nicely, where for once the Doctor was going to have a bit like K9, I guess, but he was going to have a character that was a bit more fantastic, which I sometimes think, you know, with the Doctor Who now, I don't understand why they don't go for like an Abe Sapien-like companion. They've got, you know what I mean, rather than just always like the girl, the this, the that. Why not have an Abe Sapien level prosthetic? You can do that now and have a truly alien companion. I love Belial. I think, you know, I'd love to have had Belial kept on, but I think Chameleon was in that sort of novelty companion, like Varian. I've just rewatched for a bit of Fantastic Voyage again, the series, and it's a lovely show. And you got Varian with his little tuning fork that he fires things with, and you can't wait. Even now, he's like, he's going to get his tuning fork out and tune somebody or whatever. And it's just that sort of. Chameleon was a great character, and I just think it was again a weird thing.
I think he actually. I was going to say, I think he actually in Planet of Fire, I think he ended up being used better when he was. Howard Perry's dad in the half and half stage of.
They got it right in Planet of Fire, Paul.
Sorry,
they got it right in Planet of Fire. Had it been like that in all the stories, you know, with the shape shifting, again, Chameleon. another missed opportunity just because they had other things on their mind at the time. And of course, the legend is that the moment that Chameleon turned up on the King's Demon set, they started to write him out. He's not doing very well in the chat. We've got Gary Bryant saying here it was a glorified vacuum cleaner robot from 80s Japan. Ooh, Sadako24 is saying Metal Mickey lives. Come on, give us a kiss. Oh, God.
Or Tweaky from Buck Rogers.
Who? What? Who? Never heard of it. Gary's also saying, wonder what Robert Holmes would have done Chameleon. Well, he would have turned it into something a little bit more. He certainly wouldn't have worked with a robot like that. Also, I recall there was an unlikely fan theory that Chameleon was actually meant to be in Stein's role in Resurrection of the Daleks. I don't know that one. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, I'm not sure. Scene where Chameleon and the Masters chasing Perry on the rocks in Planet of Fire is thrilling. Yeah, and you see the limitations of the robot, as John was saying there, you didn't need it, did you? You just shape-shift it, and then it runs.
On that point, and just to give Brendan his due for bringing Chameleon up, had Chameleon stayed in the show and had transmogrified into Perry's Uncle Howard in denim shorts, then I would have been happy for him to stay forever.
Yeah, well, mate, oh, bless him. Bless that. We've got time for one more, and I'm going to let our guests come to the fore now. And I'm not quite sure where you want to talk about these, Neil, but here they are. These are the Harlequin miniatures.
Oh, God, I love these.
Okay, tell us all about
it. Right. These are Harlequin miniatures, which came out in the 1990s. I was at that point sort of a delayed student. I had absolutely no money. I was on income support for a while. And the one thing that kept me going was a couple of things. But one of the things was, sort of like I used to love getting Doctor Who magazine that did VHS releases. And I couldn't afford a lot of merchandise even. But these were quite reasonable. And they were this range of tiny gaming miniatures, which I was never played the game or anything. But I've got them in the museum. I've kept them.
Oh, yes.
And basically, they were just at the time. What I loved about these was they weren't massively expensive, but there was the range of characters you could get. They were just, like there's Rom Dutt, I'm trying to think, there's like Swampy Leader, there's all sorts of characters. And obviously I like painting and things, so I enjoy painting them, but there was just the sheer number of them. And then I remember somebody online had just done a little diorama with them. And I suddenly thought, oh gosh, I could actually tell the story of Doctor Who and you could have an army of Daleks. I mean, if you've been to the museum, you'll see that one of my favorite things in the not me TARDIS Spider, but basically one of my favorite things in the museum is I did a diorama of Day of the Daleks. Yeah. And I was able to put I think it's about 8 or 9 Daleks on there coming out, and I sculpted the little the railway tunnel because I love that scene. I could have them coming out, and I had loads of holograms shoved on. It's in the museum, and I decided, and they don't take up any space really, but I just thought they were absolutely charming. You could use them for chess, absolutely, and they were just charming, and I still kept them. And when I had to sell all my Doctor Who collection to fund the museum, because somebody said to me recently, when did you win the lottery? I never did. I mean, all this rendering I did myself by my fair hand.
Yes, and you can see all that on your website and on your channel. You have a YouTube channel as well. What's your YouTube channel, Neil?
Oh, I think it's just stupidly I set it up as Neil Cole. So you see this face. And it's Neil Cole, the Museum of Class Cypher. But at the end of the day, those little miniatures, they kept me going through quite a dark time in my life. And they were just these, you'd go in and you could get a few of them, and you could buy an army of them, So it's like you could do, the moon base and have a shed load of Cybermen. And they were just charming. They're very, and at the time you had Dapol figures, which I'm fond of. But they were, and again, it was the old Daleks Cybermen. There was the Games Workshop, I think, brought out the Dalek Cybermen set. And the thing was, everything was Daleks and Dalek. And now, again, I love the Daleks, the one, but, it's Doctor Who to me was so much, it was the whole, I like the narrative. The whole point of this museum is I'm trying to tell the chronological story of Doctor Who. So it's in chronological order. And with the miniatures, there was enough of them. They even had the Stone Age guys from the tribe of Gum. They actually had those miniatures of those. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's amazing. So you could go from story 1 and literally work your way through. They had things like the Redcoat Soldier. They had from the Highlanders, Algernon Finch and all that. They're all these sort of really geeky little characters, and I just thought they were great. And
they were also the forerunner in a sense to the other things that you like, isn't it? These are the equal milestones. So, these have sort of taken on the baton really and run with it as well.
These are my other guilty pleasure. Now, the only collection I've collected in the last year or two I allowed myself to buy a second-hand. It was, do you know what it was? I was in Glastonbury, where my cousin lives, visiting it, and there's a little sci-fi shop there, and on sale, loose, was a pteroleptal eagle moss. I didn't even know what it was, but it was the pteroleptal leader, and of course, I've restored the pteroleptal leader head, and I remember saying to Lisa, I said, oh, I've got to have that. It's £6. Oh, I'll have that. It's a little pteroleptal leader. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know it was from a series. And then I realized it was eagle moss. Now, I have to say, having now collected quite a lot of them, not the new series, just collect the classic. Again, I've got them in chronological order because of my ADHD. But anyway, they're gorgeous, but there's one or two duds. The Ogron is a bit, and the Sontaran's very disappointing. But some of them, like the Ambassadors of Death and the white robot figures, are absolutely beautiful. Drathro is, they're really lovely. And I'm an action figure collector at heart, you know, and I had to sell all my action figures to fund this place. And yeah, but you just got to I had to make that, you've got to sort of focus. If you're going to do something like this and you're not a millionaire, you've got to think, right, how can I manage this? So I don't want to bore you all senseless, but Harlequin miniatures are wonderful. You can still get them from a company called Black Tree Design. So if you're wanting them, you can still buy them quite cheaply. Because the company, I think, who was it who made them? It was Harlequin. Harlequin were bought out. Yeah, and I think it was a shame because it's one of the great. I think what I like about that and Eagle Moss is the sheer number of characters. Once you start collecting, I don't just want 5 Daleks. I get Daleks. I get it. There's Daleks in Doctor Who, and there's Cybermen, and I love them, but I get that as well. I want an Ogron. I want a Crinoid. I want, Rom Dutt in the Marshes, please. I want those characters. Do you know what I mean? I just want, I'll shut up about that. Yeah.
Before Neil gets really, really cross about it all, is this. Right, so we've got some question. We've got a question here from Jack for you, Neil. Actually, before we finish, what was the hardest thing to part with that funded the museum?
Oh, I think Jack, the hardest things is the occasional original prop I'd managed to get. My motorbike was what kicked it off. I sold my motorbike to buy Ohika's gown from the Brain of Morbius, and that meant instead of using my motorbike to get to work, I just started teaching. I had 4 bus journeys a day. That was a good laugh. But other things like I think selling my character options was a killer because I'd collected from the start. I had everyone. I'd got them when they were in Tesco's,
Yeah.
And I built them, and I had to make a decision. One of the hardest is because I love action figures. I loved, the original Star Wars and Mego figures. I love all the action figures. But basically, there came a point where the character options went to Forbidden Planet, and they suddenly started doing exclusives. And I remember it was the Drashig box set came out around the time the Mechanoid set came out. And the whole thing was about that month's action figures was over 200 quid. And I was, at the same time, the way I've got props is by paying monthly installments on them, generally. It's certainly, the way I've just had to do it slowly and slowly. And I had to think, I cannot do 2 things. I cannot be a prop collector and have any chance of making a museum and be keeping up with these variant figures, Colin Baker in the TARDIS with a snot hanging out his nose version, Colin Baker's left curl a little bit more raised, 70 quid. I thought, right, I can't do both. So that was hard, and I sold a lot because I thought, if I can't get them now, I'm just going to get rid of them. And I still occasionally in B&M, now they're in B&M, I go in and I go, do not buy them. Just look away.
Try not to look at them because you don't know where we're going next year, do you?
I think that was hard. I think the hardest thing was, right, here's another one, Jack. It's quite a good one. I just reunited the Cyber Scout with its red cyber gun after 38 years. Now, that gun was the one and only gun that went with that Cyber Scout. To get that, I had no money. It was only this year, and I had to swap a Time Lord gown. It was the Time Lord Clark gown from Trial of a Time Lord. It appears in all the episodes. I've got part of the costume still, but it's hard because I thought that it would have been lovely to put that gown in, and I just had to make a tough decision with, right, what's the chances of ever getting that cyber gun ever to go with that Cyber Scout? What's the chances of that coming up? I just had to make a tough call. But the hard thing for me is that once these items go, often dealers get them, and dealers' markups are through the roof, beyond my price range. So at the end of the day, when somebody says, I'll swap you this for this, and it was, I don't know what the panel think here, what you'd have done, but I think to reunite that Cyber Scout with its cyber gun, I think for visitors to see the complete thing. And ironically, if you look at my Facebook this week, and today, there's a photo, some new photos that have come out of the Cyber Scout in the tunnel, nicely lit. And you can see the red gun on it. And at that, I thought, I'm really glad I did that, because if I'd seen that ruddy photograph of that Cyberman with that gun, do you know what I mean? Thank you, Jack. It's very kind, and you're welcome anytime. Just pop in and say hello to this stuff. It's here, so you can pop in and see. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. We've been telling you where you can get more information, and also don't forget, do look at our playlist for the visitations for the visit that Brendan and I did when we went to see Neil just a few short weeks ago. Listen, everybody, that's it. That will come to the end of the show. Hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for joining myself, the WHOTASTIC panel, and our very special guest Neil this evening for some of those guilty pleasures, those secrets that they've been festering and hiding for many years. So I hope you all feel better, panel. I hope you all feel like you've truly got things off your chest and you've had that chance. There's some great examples there. So I hope you're all invigorated now to own those confessions.
I've got more to tell you, GT. Much more to tell you.
Oh God! All right then, that's a bit worrying. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in the chat. You've been fantastic. Really lively chat tonight as well. Yeah, don't forget to obviously share. Don't forget to like, and please do subscribe to the channel. We've got lots of great stuff coming up for you. We will see you again very soon for more here on Who's Views from the WHOTASTIC panel. From Neil, who's always welcome on the show. We'll get to see you again, I'm sure. Thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.